All right, we're recording now. Mr. Timothy Ashford is our guest. We're going to be talking with him about several issues and probably won't be able to get through all of it tonight, but he's already agreed to come back and visit as much as we need him. And I think we're getting into an area where we need to hear a lot more from our judicial system here in Omaha, Nebraska. With that said, as I said, this is Timothy L. Ashford, attorney at law, and has been here in Omaha all his life, born, bred. And Timothy, if you want to give our audience a little bit about yourself as to where you went to school, and I always like to ask, why did you become an attorney?
First of all, I'll go ahead and tell you, I was around in 1968 and people in my neighborhood disappeared. That was shortly after Miranda v. Arizona. And what happened was, I remember vividly one man who was a very nice man, he just disappeared for a week. The grown folks were talking about him. I lived off 24th in Ohio, and they were just talking about him. Then one day he just walks up. A week later, his wife was scared out of her mind. He walks up a week later, and the police had held him for a whole week. Back then, they didn't have to give you your Miranda rights. They didn't have to release you. And what occurred was every adult in my neighborhood was basically arrested and taken into police custody, never charged, and they held them until they just decided to let them go. And that was one of the reasons for the Miranda v. Arizona case. I said, when I become big, I'm going to law school, because when they come and get me, and they're going to come and get me, I want to know the law. So that was the reason I decided to go to law school at 10. So, and I can go into briefly, I attended Omaha South High, graduated. I graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I attended Drake University Law School. I went on their accelerated law program. I did it in 2.5 years. I went out to Colorado and took the bar. Their bar exam at that time was 15 points higher than the Nebraska bar exam. So I went out there, I passed it on my first try. I was a prosecutor out there. I did about 150 jury trials. And after I did that, I came back to Omaha, worked for an insurance company for a while, and then I decided to go on out and become a defense attorney. And as a defense attorney, I kind of gained a little bit of a reputation. And the reason I did is I was on the Criminal Justice Act panel. And when I was, they gave me this case whereby my client walks into the house and he said, or into the office, and he says, Mr. Ashford, they arrested me for possession and possession with intent to deliver. I said, oh, okay. And he says, well, I was walking from the house to the car. I said, okay. They had a sting operation, and the sting operation is when they're watching the house for days or weeks. And he said, they ran up on me and said, you're under arrest. And then he said, well, they arrested me with possession and possession with intent to deliver. I said, I'm thinking in my mind, what do you want me to do about that? You had the crack in your head. And he said, I want a trial. I said, and to be honest with you, I tried to he didn't pay me. So I went to the court and do what attorneys do. Can I get off, Your Honor? And the judge said, no, I'm gonna pay you, okay? So I'm stuck with this trial, and I do what I do. I used to play basketball years ago with guys who went to the NBA, got drafted. I'm not an NBA player, as you can tell. And the only thing I learned from that experience is you prepare like you're going to win, even though you may not.
Right.
So I prepared like I was going to win, and guess what? I won. The jury came back in 45 minutes after a 3-day trial, and basically what they did was not guilty on possession, not guilty on possession with intent to deliver, and he walked. And after that, the Nebraska State Bar Association invited me to speak in front of 580 attorneys years later with Clarence Mock. He's the guy who convicted the crime scene investigator David Kofod, that guy who was
Right.
he was a special prosecutor, and
Mhm.
the late James Martin Davis. So
Right.
for them to invite me, and I was the youngest of the group that they invited. So they had gotten me, they invited me because I started beating up on the U.S. attorney. You know, when you go out there and you win the first case like that, all of a sudden you're on the radar. And I'll go over it in later shows, but they've done some things to try to shut me down. In
Mhm.
fact, they eventually banned me from the panel, not because I was a bad attorney. They had to get a reason to get me off. And when you're black, there are certain black
That's the
rules that
reason.
only apply to. And as one client said, he basically said I freed more blacks than Harriet Tubman. I don't know if that's true, but I'll take that as a compliment.
All right.
So those
Sounds
are
good
some
to
of the
me.
things. And there's some issues here that need to be not necessarily with me. They've been attacking me in terms of the court system. They
Mhm.
have a I have the oldest bar complaint, and I'll go into that in later segments. But they came up with the I said you filed 3 false bar complaints against me over a period of 5 years. Part of it's because of my who I represent. I represented Mondo.
Mhm.
Everybody know David Rice. He's
Right.
deceased now. I now represent Ed Poindexter. And for your information, as soon as we can get, probably in the spring, maybe by June, I'm going to go back into court and see if I can get him free. So, and with me, I don't have a lot of people who are behind me. When I go into the office and do my legal research, that's what I do. What I say is, as I told you before, every day I wake up, every day I say, Harriet Tubman's not at my back door saying, leave your cell phone. Let's run north to Canada. I'm not a slave. And every day I try to do things and make my ancestors proud. All right.
Yes.
I want them to look down and say, you know what? We didn't have an opportunity to go to school, but Tim did. And we didn't have the opportunity to confront racism, but Tim does. So, and people know I filed a lawsuit in 2015 and I wrote an article. And I wrote an article when the Omaha Star was accepting these type of articles. It's the Douglas
I
County
don't
Court
mean to
Racism.
interrupt you, but I do mean to interrupt you because I think it's an important point. We've noticed a difference in what the Omaha Star used to be. And we used to
They,
get a lot of good opinions and editorials, but it's kind of been lacking. I look more at it almost as a social newspaper instead of
paper.
the papers for the right, as the late Miss Brown would have run the newspaper, who
Right.
ran the newspaper, and if she was alive, would be running the newspaper in that manner. But I do remember that article, and if you remember, I called you because at that time, like I said, I was taking the Omaha Star because I enjoyed reading the various editorials, and your article, and we are going to be able to put it out on our screen in a
Please
little
do.
bit at the end or towards the end of this. We'll try to make sure we get it out, or we'll get it on the website. But I thought it was very to the point, and you addressed it so eloquently as you can.
Well,
And
thank you.
I'm not saying that to butter you up or make your head big. I'm just telling the truth. And if you remember, I did call you and say that, that was an outstanding article. And you even got, and I'd like for you to tell the audience what happened after that article and what you did with that article.
Okay, what happened was after I wrote, this is when in the days, and we can be objective if you're going to criticize somebody.
Yes.
Now they're not running any editorials like the one I wrote. Is the
Mm-hmm.
Douglas County Court racist? I wrote that article.
Mm-hmm.
Miss she's deceased now, Margarita Washington, Miss
Yes.
Margarita Washington. She ran almost everything I sent her in
Mm-hmm.
terms of writing. They don't run any more of my editorials, so I don't write anymore. And my
Mm-hmm.
editorials go straight to the point. I also did a 20 articles on Mondo and Poindexter explaining to the community exactly what went on with their jailing and the Operation COINTELPRO. But what happened was, as you were saying, unlike the daily paper, the other papers, I write one article. I didn't contact these people. The Nebraska Supreme Court Chief Justice Michael Heavican sent me a letter 2 days later. I'm like, the World Herald doesn't get this kind of response. The Douglas County presiding judge sent me a letter, and they were like, you know what? We're going to take care of this. We're going to take it, because the article stated, listen, you're allowing all these white attorneys to get these court appointments, and none of the black attorneys are getting any. Are you racist in doing that? And they wrote me back, and after that, they created Rule 417 just for little old me. Rule 417 basically says you have to start appointing attorneys in Douglas County on a rotating basis. Well, and then after that, I started getting all these appointments, you know, and everybody else. And there was a younger black attorney who asked me about he said a couple of months ago, thanks for doing that. Thanks for filing the lawsuit. Because I went over to Douglas County, the federal district court in Nebraska. And what I did was I sued judges in addition to that article. Well, most people say, you can't sue a judge. You are absolutely right. They have what's called judicial immunity. If I walk into the courtroom and I try to sue them for, say, they sentenced my cousin to 20 years, judicial immunity bars that. You can't sue a judge. If you go in and say, well, you dismissed my civil lawsuit, judicial immunity does not allow that lawsuit against the judge to go forward.
Right.
And you can't sue them for any of their judgments or orders. Now, in our particular case, they dismissed my case here in Nebraska, dismissed it outright for the lawsuit against the judges. Went up to the 8th Circuit and they said, wait a minute, this judge is not making an order against you or anybody personally. The judge not dismissing a lawsuit. The judge is not doing what judges do. The judges are deciding that black attorneys are not going to be on the panel to receive court appointments. They said,
now, Mr. Timothy, can I ask you because some people might not understand what you're saying, if we could break it down a little bit more when it says court appointed, when individuals go in, and I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to say if a person murders or guilty or whatever should go free. That's not what I'm saying. I just want the people to understand is that we do have a right to an attorney.
Right.
And then we do have a right to present this to a jury supposedly of our peers, if we so desire. And that what was happening is, and if you could give that background, a lot of Black and brown were not getting the choice. They were being given substandard legal.
Well,
so just kind of.
And I'll talk about that in a minute. Well, when I talk about court appointments, all these attorneys are independent contractors. Yet the court, Douglas County Court, was only giving court appointments to white attorneys. Now, here's what happens. When two people, co-defendants, get involved in a crime, they appoint one to the Douglas County Public Defender. The other one gets to be appointed from a panel of attorneys that they have a list of. Black people were not on that list. That's why I sued. We are qualified, we have law degrees, we have law licenses, yet it's like if they didn't have any Black bus drivers, or if they didn't have any Black city council persons, okay? So I sued, and once I did that, they allowed Blacks to be placed on the panel, and we were appointed just like the white attorneys on felonies and misdemeanors. I have a pending lawsuit for the murder panel. We're not on that murder panel, but and I think that kind of clarifies it for everybody. But with the to continue on, when the Supreme Court justices write you, which he did, Chief Justice Michael Heavican, he basically said, listen, we're going to start putting Blacks on the panel. We're going to start doing Rule 417, which means that's everybody's going to get on the panel. The reason this is important is everyone remembers the Tuskegee Airmen. Everyone remembers the black quarterback. When I was a kid, blacks weren't allowed to play quarterback because they weren't smart enough. The position of the court now is blacks aren't allowed to be on the murder panel because they're not qualified. That's something from the 1910s. And Don Klein's office is fighting that lawsuit with me in court. So when he's running for county attorney, I'm going to need you and the NAACP and the Urban League, and we got to bring him out and we got to say, Don, why are you fighting this lawsuit to appoint blacks on the murder panel? He's going to say, well, I got 4 black judges appointed. And my position to him when I filed my lawsuit against him, and we'll have to talk about that a little bit later.
Sure.
But my position was, you know, those 4 judges were qualified. And
right.
It didn't
Those
matter
4 judges were qualified.
Who was going to be in that seat when they were trying to get appointed. Here's the difference, and to show where your racial climate lies, what side you're on, is when I'm going and filing a lawsuit to appoint blacks to the Douglas County murder panel. And what happens is, if there's 2 people involved in a murder, and one of them gets the Douglas County attorney, the other one gets somebody from the panel. As it is now, there's no blacks on that panel. That's like not having any black quarterbacks or not letting blacks fly like the Tuskegee Airmen flew. So go ahead.
So I was just going to ask them, and what I think should be made a point of. Now, the Douglas County, you say they can appoint an attorney, but they won't be from the murder panel choice of attorneys. And those murder trial attorneys are supposedly those with these high qualifications, experience, having been involved in murder and so forth. Is that?
Nope, here's their qualifications. Okay. Their qualifications are, you got to have a law license. That's it.
I thought attorneys, panel. If you're an attorney, you have that.
Yes.
But you don't.
Yes. That's like telling a pilot, you know, I don't know what their varying degrees of pilots there are, but once you got that law license, according to their rules, that's all you need. And that's what I argued about. I said, you know what? Y'all don't have us on the panel. And here's the thing. When you're on the panel, your pay bumps up a little more. That's like not having any black general managers at Walmart or any black supervisors at Walmart. You get a certain series of different cases. So by not having us on that, it impacts our bottom line financially. But more important is, people say, well, you just want to be on the murder panel. Yes, I'm fighting this battle, but it's going to be more so for the younger attorneys, 10 to 15 years younger than me, because I'm trying to get them on the panel so that by the time they're my age, 20 years down the road, they've done a number of murder trials from the panel. So
what has been, if from the Douglas County appointing public defender, what is the racial makeup of public defenders? Are they black?
They've got maybe 3 or 4 of them. I know 2 right off the bat, and you know, they're public defenders, so they've opened their doors. Klein's office has had a number of people pass through their
you say pass through.
yeah. Some of them went on to be judges. So 4 of them came through, and they're all judges. So that I can remember 4 of them. But they need to replenish that group. And with Klein, as you know, as I said, I had I filed a lawsuit, and I haven't heard anything about it. My lawsuit basically was some individuals attempted to extort me. I took the case to Don Klein, and he refused to prosecute. So I filed a writ to make him do his job. Now, here's the problem I'm having. If I was white, I said, Don, you would have filed that. And because, for example, he filed a case on behalf of Susie Buffett, an embezzlement case, which was widely publicized. And that Susie
I remember
Buffett
that.
case, yeah, he filed that twice. The judge battalion dismissed it, and then he refiled it. And I'm like, why don't I get this kind of effort? Well, part of my lawsuit was if you sue Douglas County and you're Black, you don't get the protection of the county attorney. And that's I'm gonna make that an issue when he runs for re-election. And what occurred was, the reason I said that is, there was when that Scurlock case came,
Yes,
he
we all remember
refused,
that one.
he refused to prosecute. He
Correct.
came out there. So I had friends who happened to be white said, man, that was a fast decision. So after the protesters got to him, and he can't say they didn't, after the protesters got to him, he decided to go ahead and appoint a special prosecutor. That's what I said he should have done in my case. And what happened was, they moved my case from Omaha to Lincoln so that people like you couldn't come, you know, or it's making more difficult,
right,
a hurdle. Because people were there at the first one, then they secretly, we want to move it over here. And I haven't had a decision on that. And I'm saying, you know what? This just shows you, if they do this to me in open, what are they doing to Black people overall? Well, let me tell you what they're doing. Ernie Chambers had a law that when anybody dies in custody, what occurs at that point is, if they die in custody, a special prosecutor was appointed in 2000. I was assistant special prosecutor on that George Bibbins case. People don't remember that. Just you remember that high-speed.
Oh yeah, well, I remember the Bivens case.
Yeah, okay. Their office refused to prosecute after they didn't return a grand jury indictment. Okay, a no true bill. Okay, they didn't give me any charges. Yet they came into court and there was a battle. And at that point, the law is that if anybody dies in custody. After that, after Ernie left office, and I want to emphasize, after Ernie left office, they changed the law. And I'm telling people, my position is Don Klein went forward and changed that law to make it from the private, you have to appoint a special prosecutor, to his office gets that. And the problem with his office handling any of those type of cases is they're too cozy with the police. This is just going on with in line with the George Floyd. Right. What we're saying is we need independent special prosecutors. And I'm gonna talk to Justin Wayne and Terrell McKinney and tell them, when you have that bill, when you reenact it and revive it, you have to make sure there's 2 special prosecutors appointed, because that's a lot of work, number one. But the other thing is, you have to make sure that they can get all the resources. And Ernie had it 5 years. And if I had talked to Senator Chambers before that, I would have said they need to have at least 15 years as a criminal defense. And those were little things. I also, in my lawsuit, I proposed a class that all of the people who are on that panel must take, a 5-hour continuing legal education law class. And in that, I proposed certain things, for example, DNA. And since I started, I got a dismissal on my first DNA case. This was like 12 or 15 years ago. And I'm gonna let you know what happened. I'm sitting there and they assigned me this DNA case and I go, what the heck? And I don't know anything about DNA. So there's this guy who's the leading expert attorney in it. So I pick up the phone and say, hey man, how you doing? Now, I met him before and I knew him. I said, I need to know about some DNA. And he was like, check your email. I went, what? There was a book on it that was 68 pages long. I read the book and I was like, and I remember my client came in and they tell you stuff, but you just basically go, okay. But everything my client told me was true. And he said, I want the DNA. And I was like, okay, we got it. And it exonerated him. The things she said,
DNA.
The DNA. She said
That
these
DNA
things
will get
happen,
you.
and they didn't happen. And they said, ma'am, we can't fight with the science. So, yeah.
It's really important. One thing, and I do want to continue on, but one thing you didn't mention, you actually have appeared before the Supreme Court.
The Nebraska Supreme Court, not the
Right.
U.S. Supreme
The
Court.
Nebraska Supreme Court, yeah.
Yeah, on
A lot of
number
attorneys
occasions.
have been in and they haven't been able to do that and successfully.
I also appear before the Eighth Circuit. Sometimes, and next time they come, I'm going to send a shout out to all the African Americans, all the Blacks, all the Negroes, all the colored people, to let them know we're here. Because we, and I talked to you about this, Cheryl, are older, general, not that you're old, but are older.
Right.
We need to, we have a duty to our village, and we
Yes.
have a duty to God to make sure that we watch this racist system. And people say, well, you're an attorney, you shouldn't call it. Is racist. It is.
And that's the problem. It's the problem. Just like I was on a call not too long ago, just a few days, and we're talking about the building of prisons.
Yeah.
And Nebraska is number 2 in the state. Other places are trying to find ways to keep from
people out
going to prison and building these, and we're steady trying to find space to build them. They didn't learn their lesson on this last one, so now we're building a new one. But the point is, as I pointed out, was it's not that we have overcrowding because of the way the jail is built and we need more. No, it's the racial system,
systemic racism.
Systemic racism that is in the justice system and judicial, and particularly in Nebraska. People can say, oh, yeah, it is the good life for some.
Not for us.
Like for pretty much most Black and brown and poor people.
Right. And what I've told people about that in terms of, you get the prosecutor, you start there, Don Klein's office. Are they harsher on Black criminal defendants? Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Clearly.
Are the judges harsher? And see, I told people about the prayer. This Black man took his knees and said, Lord, Lord, can you send somebody down here to take care of this racism? And God replied, I did. You. It's our duty. It's our duty. Okay. And when people say it's not our duty, it is.
It is our duty.
And here's what happens when, for example, even when Don Klein, and I'm going to be advocating that, just as that lady, you heard about the Arbery trial, didn't you?
Yes, yes.
They arrested that first prosecutor. You know that, right?
Right. I heard that. Okay. I haven't documented it, so I can only say I have heard that. And it's one on my list I should have and will. Well, yes.
This ex-Glenn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson indicted. And the reason she is she didn't do what you're supposed to do. After the civil rights movement, they enacted a law, 242, I believe that's the statute. And what it basically says, if there's any official who fails to perform their duty under the law, they can be indicted. Now, I'm not going to this is going to be no secret. For the next year, I'm going to say Don Klein should be indicted for that, for the Scurlock case, James Scurlock. The analogy is the same. She failed, ex-Glenn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson failed to file charges. Don Klein failed to file charges. They later indicted and convicted for those white men for the death of Ahmaud Arbery. They later indicted the person who shot and killed James Scurlock down at the old market. And here's the thing I'm saying. If the Black leaders, the people, the so-called Black leaders, don't come around to me as the most experienced Black criminal defense attorney in the state of Nebraska, then I'm going to have to be a little bit louder. I'm going to have to go straight to the people. I'm going to have to let the people know. what happened was, as I told people, when Will Brown was killed in 1919, the official government position was that Will Brown terrorized the community. James Scurlock was killed in 2020. Don Klein basically said Scurlock was terrorizing the community at one point. That was an ethical violation that attorneys are not supposed to talk like that. He never should have made those statements. And I was at home and I was livid. I don't get mad over very many things, but I was just up because what you had was Black parents who had nothing to do with this. I think his mom's white, his dad's Black, but nothing to do with this. And you're looking on TV, seeing this guy say, your son was terrorizing the community. My heart fell for them. And Justin Wayne, as his attorney, should be joining in with me on this, okay? And I'm gonna speak to Justin at some point, but he needs to go ahead and he should be the one pushing more than me, to be quite frank with you. But our community, the NAACP, the Urban League, and all these so-called leaders, they need to start stepping up or moving aside because we need to start saying
I can
things.
agree with you. And I just had a conversation with a young male today, and he was saying, we were talking about something entirely off from this, but the point is, you know, what is it going to take in order for this village to rise up again and stop what's happening to us? And what really hurts and makes it so hard is that, Tim, it's a lot of our own people.
Yeah.
We have, unfortunately, we have a small number of individuals within this community that the larger community with power can only see that group. And that group is taking advantage of the majority of this community and the Black and brown community. They are, you know, taking and doing things, like I said, that are allowing these individuals to take and put this harsh treatment on to the people. And then they want to say, well, what are you going to do? What do you see? We're not supposed to be, if you are so-called leader, you are the one that should be out there battling and taking the root, not saying, well, you know, you need to step up to the plate. No, you need to step up to the plate.
And let me tell you a story. You're familiar with Malcolm X, House Negroes and Field Negroes. Well, back in the day, there was this field Negro who had been worked and beaten. And this is a story that I made up, okay? He'd been beaten and beaten and beaten. And he said tonight, he was talking to the other slaves. Tonight, we're gonna go in and we're gonna kill Massa dead. I'm tired of this brutality. And then they said, Theophilus, that's his name. The master wanted to see you in the big house. And he went up there, he said, yes, master, because that usually meant a whooping. He said, well, Theophilus, I'm gonna take you out of, and this is an adult area, I'm gonna take you out of the field and I'm gonna bring you in to the house. And I'm gonna make you a breeder, okay? And he said, what is that? And he explained it to him and went, dang, that's the good life. So then what happened was, he goes back out and he said, okay, man, we're gonna kill the master today. He said, whoa, wait. Master's been pretty good to us.
Matter of change. Real quick.
So when they are getting things and they're getting there, and a lot of them do it for the little bit of money they can get, and their egos are satisfied, and you know them, you see them over and over and over again.
Oh, we know who they are. Yeah.
And every time something comes up, they call them out they have never talked to me, ever. I'm the most experienced criminal defense attorney. they've invited me to speak before the Nebraska State Bar Association.
Yes, I did see that research. Yes.
Back in the day, and this is what happened, Cheryl. It went from Democrat led those people to the Trump people came in. When the Trump people came in, they came after me. They and I don't particularly like them either, but you know what? When I was a kid, I went to a restaurant and they wouldn't allow me to eat or buy my cheeseburger in that restaurant because I was black. The lady said, "We don't serve your kind in here." And I was like, I cried, I was 10. But now they said, "You're not on the panel. I write articles and I sue you." That's what I do. Okay. You don't, and you should see sometimes I go over there and they go, "Hey, I didn't have any part of this. I got a letter from the governor. I didn't have nothing, any part of this."
Let's make this clear right now.
And Cheryl, I tell you, you're like my sister. I'm glad I could pick up the phone and call you because I got a letter from the governor. And the first part of it, I was like, blankety blank, 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 governor. And I had another friend and she said, "You can't send that letter to the governor." I said, the second letter was, "You blah, blah." And she said, "No, no, no." So I wrote back. Finally, she got me to agree on, "I received your letter. Thank you." Okay. If you're gonna go, and I told you this, if you're gonna go out, like my big mama used to say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But sometimes when things are, you gotta call it as you see it. And I kind of blame the community on the good people like me being quiet. You know, I've called the media numerous times. They won't respond to me. They don't cover my stories, yet they cover a white attorney story about returning from the Bahamas, yet trying to get blacks on a panel to represent poor people in murder cases is not important for the news to cover. Well, then, like Trump says, they're fake news. And people are shocked that I am a Trump fan. Now, don't cut me off.
I have free speech here. I can say what I want, do what I want, and also I can allow my, because I don't have to agree with it, but I can allow my guests to do it.
Let me explain to you why I'm a Trump fan, okay? I don't believe in his conservative Republican philosophy, but I do believe if you think you've been aggrieved, if you think that there's a problem and your constitutional rights have been taken away, both me and Trump, we file lawsuits. we're birds of a feather.
You got that in common.
Yeah, we're gunslingers. I'm like, forget you. I'm taking my constitutional rights in court. That's the same thing he said. I think I'm a white man. That's what the problem is in terms of my constitutional rights. People go, "How dare you think that you're, oh, no. See, this is what the problem is. As I told people, and I tell people this story, my friends, I took the DNA test, okay? And there's a certain percentage of me that is white, all right? And I was shocked at how much it was, but it is, okay? So I talked to my friend one day, a white person, this white lady, I know she's just a friend. And I said to her, I was kind of, I'm white, right? She said, "No, you're not." I said, "Okay." I told her the percentage. If you put, say I said 25%. I said, if a cup of coffee was 25% poison, would it be poison? She went, yeah. I said, "Well, I'm 25% white."
So you're right.
She said, "It don't work like that." But I said, here's the point, and this is the most important point.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what percentage I am of any color. The Constitution applies to me, okay? Just like everybody else. The United States Constitution applies to me, and I can't be deprived of my rights, no matter who you are in this country. It applies to people who are here illegally. It applies to people who've been born here. It applies to people who came in and got their citizenship. And I explained that to my friend. And I explain that sometimes when I give talks. It doesn't matter what your percentage of heritage is, or how much of whatever type of nationality you have in you. The most important thing is when you're walking down the street and the police want to stop you, regardless of whether you're black or white, the Constitution applies to you, and you have the right to remain silent,
Right.
and all those other rights. And sometimes our young people don't realize that. But here's my wish is that we get a group of older people who've been retired and who have some time on their hands to go down and sit in on the courts. You'll be surprised at what happens when judges
Yes.
find out they're being watched by people they don't know. The courtrooms are open. And they had a kind of a program like that in Chicago, because
Mhm.
I've seen them give some sentences to young black men based on how they look.
Yeah.
I see that's a much harsher sentence, you know?
I used to do that. I used to go down to the courtroom, and I had one time where I went down and I was sitting there. I think maybe the second row, whatever it was. That was before you had the media had the first row and everything. And so there was a couple of cases that went by, and I kept sitting there, and pretty soon the official, Sheriff Steele, came over
Right.
and said, "What are you waiting on? What case are you waiting on? What case are you here for? What, you know?" And I said, I thought I had the right just to be in this courtroom.
Right.
And they were like, already. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't do any of that. I just said, I'm here just observing. And of course, that went back to the clerk, and then back to the judge, so they could be sure. Like, are you here with the media or something? I'm here observing. I thought I had the right to be here. To say, oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And one of the cases, there were several, and one of the cases that was really interesting was a Hispanic gentleman. And he had been held, I don't remember the number of days.
Right.
But, and I don't know if it was because they were being watched or what, but the judge finally said, well, we can't do this case because there's no one here to represent him, because there's no one here to translate. There's no interpreter here.
Right.
And he is entitled, if he cannot speak, or presumably alleged cannot speak the language or understand the language, he is supposed to have someone here in this court before you can have that hearing for that person. And I was like, I wonder if I hadn't been here or somebody hadn't been watching, what would have happened to this gentleman, because they'd already held him for a week.
Right.
At least a week. And he didn't have any idea. And he was like, I don't know what you're saying, I don't know whether he really didn't know or did know.
Right.
But the point was, you've held this man, you brought him up here into this courtroom, and you were allowed to do that. And what if, and I happen to know a lady who's over in South Omaha, and that's what she does, is interpret and translate. And so I just thought that was an experience. And I thought after that, I was like, every young person should be part of the education, is to go in and sit in a courtroom a day on hearings that involve individuals of color. As Richard Pryor said, the late Richard Pryor said, justice is just us. Right. And I'm not sure what it's going to take to help our young people to understand. It's not justice.
Well, and I'm going to the NAACP meeting tomorrow at 11:30 at Mount Zion. I'm going to be there, and I have to start making myself more vocal. And we need to organize.
Really, Tim? Really? You're not vocal? Oh, when did that start?
I'm talking about being more on the Twitter the Zoom. I'm not on that like I'm
Uh-huh.
supposed to be. You know, I thank you for inviting me because I've been getting a few more invitations on, but I've got to be on there more like these other people. In fact, one of the things I would say is, you know, we have a Douglas County Commissioner, and I'm gonna say this repeatedly, who
Mhm.
knows that I have a lawsuit to put Blacks on the panel, the murder
Mhm.
panel, and he's
Mhm.
Black, and his name is Chris Rogers. That's an objective fact. Chris Rogers has to tell this community, okay, Chris, Tim Ashford has his lawsuit. What's your involvement? What's your opinion? What are you
Mhm.
doing? Because we
Mhm.
get people like that, and as long as nobody asks them any questions, they don't have to give any answers.
Nope. And
So,
they're very good at that.
and I'm gonna
Very
tell
good.
you, everything I'm gonna come and tell you is gonna be something objective that you can see in writing. For when I said that Don Klein, I believe he removed that provision to have the special prosecutor, that's in writing. It was
Mhm.
in there, he became Douglas County attorney, and all of a sudden it's gone, okay? How'd it get gone, Don? No, the citizens don't care about that. Okay, so I'm telling people he removed that provision. I'm telling people he did not prosecute that Skurlock case like he should have. And then he had a press conference where he announced he was going to be Republican. Well, at that press conference, he should have said, and I'm resigning from the Douglas County attorneys because you all elected a Democrat. That's what he should have said. But no.
Well, he did come out. I saw that. And then also the Douglas County Commission Board gave him some kind of proclamation or award or something. And good old Chris voted right along with it. Because I
Well,
remember going down there to speak. But
as Black people, we have to see ourselves as David and their Goliath. Okay. Go ahead.
Tim, I gotta cut us off, but this is
Okay.
just as I like to say, this is just the first one. And
Yes.
it's an enticement to get people to come back to hear more from Timothy Ashford,
Thank you.
attorney here in Omaha, Nebraska, that is fighting for the village.
Yes,
So
and I tell people, thank you for inviting me, Cheryl. And when we're not on here, I say, Cheryl, you're my sister. So we're two of a kind. We think just alike. And Cheryl, I call you up sometimes and you keep me out of trouble. So,
well, I'm
so my
trying hard,
sister.
but and sometimes, I like and appreciate because I had asked you when you got the law, what was it, 471 or whatever the law is to get more Black attorneys to be
Yeah,
appointed.
Rule
And I
417.
asked you, I said, well, Tim, how many attorneys have come back and said anything to you to appreciate? You said, oh, I don't know, not many, or
Yeah.
I'm not going to say any. I'm like, but you should,
Right.
because if you do something that's right, there's no reason why not to. And what
Right.
we need to help is to get the thing, across is you do something to help them, and then they don't reach back to
Right.
help one another. And that's the
Yeah.
only way that things are going to change. And when I
We
say
get
we,
better and
that's
stronger.
my people, that we're going to move is if we reach back and help one other, and then that one will help back and acknowledge.
Yeah, and I tell
acknowledge
people
it.
I tell people you are my wiser sister. When you've given me
I don't
so
know
much
about
good
that
advice,
sometimes.
yeah, wiser. I'm sitting there going, you know what, Cheryl's right. Okay.
Yeah, you called me up and you said, I just had to tell you, you know what, you were right on that. So sometimes you got to toot your own horn. But again, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it. And this is just the first, and we will be back with conversations with Cheryl Weston. Thank you, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, bye. Thanks.